Hey everybody, welcome to Fire Your Inner Critic, Find Your Inner Badass, and finally build your business. Cassandra Von Worsley here with you. If you're watching on YouTube, I have said this over and over again. I'm going to say it again. You want to be a part of our community of entrepreneurs. We've got rock star entrepreneurs who are at every level of business, aspiring, established, absolutely magnetically successful, and climbing as we speak. You want to be a part of our community. So join us at facebook.com/groups/fire your inner critic. All right. So today we are talking about, in today's training, we're talking about how do you shift your entrepreneurial identity. So let me just talk for a second about identity. A lot of people get confused about what comes first, right? Let's say you're thinking about building a business and you've always been an employee. And so you live in the employee mindset, you have the employee mindset, and a part of you has fear and self-doubt, right? Your inner critic is sitting on your shoulder, chirping in your ear. And the question that comes up for you as you think about building this business is, I've never built a business before. I've never built a business before. I don't know what I'm doing. How am I going to go from being somebody who works for somebody else, who does my one role, does it well, to being somebody who runs the whole show? How do I go from one to the other? How do I do that? And I think it's a really important question because a lot of people feel like before they can truly be an entrepreneur, before they can say, okay, yes, I own my own business, I am a writer, I am a speaker, a lot of people live under the false assumption that they have to prove that they are that first. You know, they've got to go do a TED Talk before they can call themselves a speaker. They have to, write 10 books before they call themselves a writer. Here's the problem with that kind of thinking. And there are two camps, there are those who believe that you act your way into identity. So the more you do it, the more you become it. And then there's this other camp, and I live in this other camp, that says, no, you create the identity, you decide the identity, and then you embody it. So I think it's really important that you know which camp you live in. And not to say that one is wrong and one is right, but one works better for you. So if you're in the camp that says, okay, I have to act my way into being, then what's going to work for you in starting a business and building a successful business is you're going to have to take the actions quietly, not, openly talk about what you're doing. And then once the results come, then you'll feel like you can stand in the power of your entrepreneurship. For others of us, we establish the identity first. And because we commit to the identity, we then embody it and we're congruent with it. And then things begin to show up. Now, I'm going to tell you why I'm in the camp of identity first, action second. Because here's what I found. Having been a personal trainer, having lost a lot of weight, gained a lot of weight, up and down all over the place, what I can tell you is that in my experience, if you don't commit to your identity first, even when you take the actions, for example, of losing weight and you drop all the weight. You ever hear people say, I lost 80 pounds, but I still feel like a fat person in a thin person's body? Why is that? It's because they took the actions, they got the results, but their identity didn't change. They did not change who they knew themselves to be. So I'm going to talk today about how do you shift your entrepreneurial identity, but know that I'm coming from the place of, it's not that you build the, 5 million a year business first and then you feel like an entrepreneur. It's actually that you own the identity first. You embody that version of you as an entrepreneur and then you begin to live into it. It's not something you live up to. Shifting your entrepreneurial identity is something that you live into. That's a very important distinction. If I'm living up to something, then I'm always reaching for something that on some level I feel like I can't ever fully attain because it's not really me if I'm living up to it. If I'm living into something, then what I'm saying is that's in me. I have the ability to do that. So I'm just tapping into activating my resources and getting there. So here's the question. If you're an employee or you have an employee mindset or you feel like, I know I can be a good business owner, but I don't know how to own The fact that I'm an entrepreneur, I don't know how to really live in that space. Here's how you shift your entrepreneurial identity. And there are a number of steps. And I'm going to tell you that the steps I'm going to go through with you today, they do take, I'd say, anywhere from 2 to 4 hours to do. So this is really something that when you want to shift your entrepreneurial identity, the beginning of it, let me correct that. The beginning of it, when I'm about to walk you through those steps, they do take 2 to 4 hours. And then you got to live it, right? You got to live into it. So set aside 2 to 4 hours to do this, because it really does take that kind of deep work, focused time, and then you'll live into what we're about to talk about. So shifting your entrepreneurial identity, step number 1. This is really important, and actors do this so well. You have to do your homework on who you want to be. Step number 1 to shift your entrepreneurial identity. You know, when an actor prepares for a role, they get the synopsis of the character. They get who the character is. And then what they start to do is they create their own background, their own history of that character. You know, they write out how the character was raised, what the family life was like, key moments the character may have had. Now, the screenwriter doesn't give the actor all of this information. The actor creates who this character is. And so the first thing you want to do if you're going to shift your entrepreneurial identity is you need to do your homework on who you want to be. Okay, how do you do that? Think about the entrepreneur that you want to be in 5 years, meaning how much revenue per year is that entrepreneur making? What is the size of their business? Do you have employees in 5 years? What are you doing every day? And I want you to ask at that level of business, I want you to ask certain questions of yourself. This is how you do your homework on who you want to be, which is step 1. You say at this level, let's say you want to get to 500,000 a year. So at 500,000 a year in revenue, who am I as an entrepreneur? Who am I? How do I show up for life? What does my day look like? You know, where is my focus on a daily basis? What thoughts, feelings, and actions am I taking? And you go even a little bit deeper. So one of the things that I like to do is I always write this stuff out. So when you say add a certain amount of revenue per year, when my business hits this level, how do I feel every day in my life? Write down how you feel. Do you feel satisfied? Do you feel confident? Do you feel powerful? Do you feel loving? How do I feel every day at that moment in my business? Add a certain amount per year. What thoughts do I focus on? When I wake up in the morning, let's say 5 years from now, you're at $1 million a year. When you wake up in the morning at $1 million a year, what are your thoughts? Right? I bet they're different than they are right now as you're starting a business, building a business. But at that revenue point, what do you focus on? What are your thoughts? How do you show up for life every day? You know, when you've got, I don't know, 5 million sitting in the bank, I think you show up differently, hopefully, than when you have $2 in the bank. How do you show up every single day? Here are some other questions. When you are at that revenue point that you want to be at in 5 years, when you're at your lowest points, even with all that money in the bank, right? Because money doesn't fix a lot of the most important things in life. So at that revenue, at your lowest points, how do you show up? Because I think a lot of people think that money solves all things. It doesn't. And so you also want to look at when you hit that revenue point, when you've got that amazing business to where you want it to be, and you're low, like certain things in your life are not working, how do you still show up anyway? And then looking at, you know, what thoughts, feelings, and actions are you taking at that point in your business on a regular basis? So first step to shifting your entrepreneurial identity is really do your homework on who you want to be. How do you want to think, feel? How do you operate in your day? How do you treat other people? How do you show up for life? How do you show up for life when life is tough and you've got this amazing business? Because there will be moments when you'll have this amazing business and life will be hard as hell. How do you show up for those moments? So that's step number 1 to shift your entrepreneurial identity. Step number 2, once you've done your homework on the you that you are, that you want to be in 5 years or 10 years, now you've got to actually script your role and write your letter. And so again, when actors prepare for a role, they write out this huge narrative. Sometimes it's 5-8 pages where they put themselves in that role as if that's how they live every day. And they just write out like, this is what I do, and this is how I wake up, and this is how I go to sleep, and this is how I feel. You want to script out your entrepreneurial identity, pen and paper. Yes, old-fashioned pen and paper. And you want to write a letter from the perspective of your future self. Now, I like to do 90 days out. Some people do writing a letter from a year from now or 5 years from now. But you want to write a letter from your future entrepreneurial identity to yourself right now, explaining to the you today, how did you get there? How does it feel to be there? What steps did you take? What did you learn along the way? You write this letter in your own handwriting because this is something that on a daily basis, yes, I said daily, you're going to read out loud to yourself every single day. You're going to read it so you can feel who you already are and who that future version of you is, so you can live into it on a daily basis. So step number 2 is you script your role, you write your letter. Step number 3, I would say probably this is not the most important, but it is one of the most important steps in shifting your entrepreneurial identity. Step number 3 is you've got to commit to being, embodying, and living out the role for the next 24 hours. See, I didn't say 24 days. I didn't say 5 weeks. People, when you're shifting identity of any sort, the worst thing you can do to say to anybody is, you got to be that for 14 days or 30 days. Most people, the identity that they want is so different from where they currently feel they are. To ask them to do it beyond 24 hours is a stretch. So what you want to commit to is you want to say, okay, I'm going to commit to living, embodying, and being that version of me for the next 24 hours. That's it. Just for the next 24 hours. And I'm going to see how it goes. And when you tell people commit to that for 24 hours, they sort of breathe a sigh of relief and they go, okay, I can be that version of me for the next 24 hours, because then I can go back to being the me that I'm used to. And then once you commit to doing that and you do it for 24 hours, guess what you do? You do it all over again. So you renew that commitment every 24 hours. And if you slip a day or a week or 2 weeks, you still can always say, all right, let me embody that entrepreneurial version of me just for the next day, for the next 24 hours. I lost it for 2 weeks, that's okay. The next 24 hours. And you repeat, repeat, repeat. So those are the steps to shift your entrepreneurial identity. Why is it important at the end of the day to shift identity? Because we always, at the end of the day, this is why self-sabotage is such a big thing. At the end of the day, we always default back to who we believe we are. I want you to hear this. This is why sometimes you see people who seem to be overnight successes and then they lose everything. The human condition is we will always be congruent with who we believe we are. So if you take all those actions and you're successful for a minute, if on the inside you don't believe you really are that version of you, you will default eventually and you will go back to where you were. So we shift identity first, because if I change, if I embody, if I say to myself, I'm committing to be the entrepreneurial version of me that does this, then I'm going to stay at that level. I'm going to sustain that when I get there. But if I say, I don't know if I really can do this, and I'm going to try really hard, and I'm going to see how it goes, and you get there, but you've always been living this identity of, I'm going to see, I don't know if I can do this, you will default back to the, I don't know if I can do this. So it's really important to work on shifting your entrepreneurial identity, because your inner critic is pretty powerful in its own identity. For you to activate your inner badass, for you to sustain the level of success you want, you have got to shift your identity first, before the action. And I've given you the steps to do it. So I will see you guys on the next FB Live training. If you're watching on YouTube, join us, facebook.com/groups/fire your inner critic. I will talk to you guys next time.